I think the priority and where they should be putting their efforts and their weaponry and their ammunition is in driving the Russians off their soil, not in striking into Russian territory.
Well, the latest upsurge in the war in Ukraine will undoubtedly be discussed when the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak meets President Biden in Washington later this week. Lord Darroch is a former UK National Security Advisor and a former British Ambassador to the United States and joins us now. Good evening, Lord Darroch.
Good evening, Carol.
Really good to have you with us. What do you make of these conflicting claims that we're getting about what's going on in Ukraine?
First of all, I agree that there is almost nothing that you can trust or take at face value about claims from the Russians, from Moscow, about what is going on, about casualty figures, about where the action is or what the impact is. The track record there is basically of consistent lies, so I would ignore that. I'm not sure you can actually take at exact face value either what the Ukrainians are saying. There is clearly some new military activity going on. We are all waiting for the Ukrainian counteroffensive. This could be diversionary. This could be a testing attack to see how deep and strong Russian defenses are, or it could be the start of the main offensive. We don't know yet. But this counteroffensive has been much talked about, including by the Ukrainians. It's going to happen sooner or later. Maybe it started.
And it is crucially important, isn't it, that if Ukraine does start a renewed push to try to regain territory that's been taken by the Russian forces, that it does make some headway now?
Yeah, I think this is potentially the crucial moment of this war. I don't think one could assume that, I would like this not to be the case, but I don't think one can assume that current levels of Western support will be available indefinitely. There's been a great deal of ammunition, armament flowing into Ukraine in the past few months to prepare them for this offensive. It needs, I think, to show signs of significant success. I wouldn't like to try and define now what exactly success looks like, but they do need to be driving the Russians back kilometers, not meters. Ideally, they need to be cutting Russian supply lines. They will need to be able to show, I think, they will want to show the West that there has been some impact from everything, that all the support that we have been giving them.
Now, we've also seen renewed military activity inside Russian territory, haven't we? We're hearing reports of attacks, shell fire and so on in the Belgorod region of Russia down near the border. We had last week those drone attacks on Moscow. The British Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, said, well, Ukraine's entitled to take the attack wherever it wants to, whereas the United States seemed much, much more cautious, insisting that it wouldn't support attacks inside Russian territory. Do you think there's a potential tension there when Rishi Sunak meets President Biden in Washington later this week?
I'm not sure that, I think there is so much on Ukraine that they will agree on, but I doubt if they will spend much time discussing different nuances here. The problem, Carol, with this stuff that's going on just over the border inside Russia is it's very, very hard to understand what the truth is, even harder than the offensives and counteroffensives in Ukraine. And there have been, in terms of some of the stuff going on, Ukrainians absolutely denying it's anything to do with them, while the Russians accuse it of them. A few weeks ago, we had that drone attack apparently on Moscow, which the Ukrainians said was nothing to do with them. So I wouldn't even want to hazard a guess about who is actually responsible. On the face of it, in terms of whether Ukrainians should, if it is them, they should be doing this or not. Well, in terms of them being invaded by a foreign force with no cause for that invasion, in a sense, they have a right to retaliate, including on Russian soil. I myself would be cautious about encouraging them to do this. however wronged they have been, because I think the priority and where they should be putting their efforts and their weaponry and their ammunition is in driving the Russians off their soil, not in striking into Russian territory.
What do you think is going to be the main focus then of that very important meeting between Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden on Wednesday?
I think the Americans are, let's remember, by a long, long way, the lead suppliers, the lead supporters of Ukraine. Something like 90% of the ammunition weaponry that's gone to Ukraine has come from the United States. I think we're second, and we're the biggest of the European supporters. And we've been first to move on issues like supplying Ukrainians with tanks. So I think we can hold our heads up in this company. And I think that Rishi Sunak will have more credibility with President Biden because of what we have done in Ukraine. But I think they will talk about the prospects for the offensive. They will exchange notes on what is happening, because we'll be 24, 48 hours on from where we are tonight. I think they will also talk about, probably privately, they won't say much about this at the press conference, about what success would look like. I mean, just what does it mean? How much do you have to push the Russians back for the West to be able to believe that all of their efforts in support of Ukraine have brought results? So I think it'll be one of the main subjects of discussion, but not, by the way, the only one, because there's lots else to talk about, including relations with China and including Rishi Sunak's ideas that I read he is going to present to President Biden about the need for an international regulation of artificial intelligence. I mean, artificial intelligence has to be regulated, and it's much, much better if we do this as a coherent international community than if everyone does their own different bits of regulations. That's actually an important initiative too, potentially.
And we've been hearing tonight further warnings about the potential risks from artificial intelligence. Systems could be powerful enough to actually kill many humans within 2 years. This is according to Matt Clifford, who is an advisor to the Prime Minister on AI. As you say, Rishi Sunak is saying that we do need this overarching international body to deal with this. I mean, do you agree, as a former national security advisor, about the potential threats on this and perhaps the importance of Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden working collectively to try to get some bodies that can regulate this globally?
Well, it's a fair question, Errol. I'm not able to say very much. I finished as National Security Advisor in 2015, and this has exploded onto the scene much more recently than that. So I didn't spend much time on this issue when I was National Security Advisor. And I find it, honestly, maybe it's my age, bewildering to try to follow the news on this, because new and ever more alarming threats seem to arise every week. So I feel that, that the story is running well ahead of my understanding of it. But what I would say is it's unquestionable, as with the wider social media internet, that there needs to be regulation. And I am stone cold certain that it's much better to do it collectively, so the same rules apply everywhere, than if everyone goes off and does their own thing. It'll be much less effective, and it will be divisive.
Lord Darroch, great to have you with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.